The massive Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the human delegation walked in. The various alien representatives, each from civilizations thousands of years more advanced than Earth, watched with barely hidden amusement as Captain James Miller led his small team toward the center platform. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, with floating platforms and holographic displays that made Earth's most advanced technology look like children's toys. The council members, representing over 300 species, sat in tiered rows that reached up into the darkness of the vast dome above. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," announced High Counselor Blake, a tall being with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in the chamber's soft light. "We have reviewed your application to join the Galactic Council. However, before we proceed, we must assess your military capabilities." Miller nodded, his face maintaining a professional calm. He had been chosen for this mission precisely because of his ability to remain composed under pressure. "We are prepared to demonstrate Earth's defensive capabilities," he said, his voice clear and strong. The human team activated their presentation system, displaying images of Earth's most advanced military hardware. As pictures of tanks, fighter jets, and various firearms appeared in the holographic space, murmurs of laughter began to ripple through the chamber. "Are these projectile weapons?" asked Counselor Ross, his four eyes blinking in disbelief. "You still use chemical propellants to launch metal objects." Miller continued calmly, "Yes, Counselor. Our weapons are primarily kinetic-based." The laughter grew louder. Several council members weren't even trying to hide their amusement anymore. One particularly loud member shouted, "They're still using gunpowder. Actual explosions to move metal." High Counselor Blake raised a hand for silence, though his lips twitched with barely suppressed mirth. "Captain Miller, surely you understand our concern. Every species in this chamber has moved beyond such primitive weapons. We utilize plasma rifles, particle beams, and energy-based weapon systems. Your technology is, well, it's thousands of years behind the galactic standard." Miller exchanged glances with his team member, Lieutenant Pete Brown, who gave him a subtle nod. They had expected this reaction. "With respect, High Counselor," Miller responded, "effectiveness isn't always about technological advancement. Our weapons have proven reliable and lethal throughout our history. Against other humans, perhaps," interrupted Counselor Ross. "But modern shield technology renders such primitive weapons useless. Even our civilian vessels have basic energy shields that would stop any physical projectile." Miller stepped forward, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "If I may, High Counselor, we would be willing to demonstrate our weapons' effectiveness against your shield technology." The chamber erupted in laughter again. High Counselor Blake wiped tears from his eyes before responding. "Captain, we don't wish to embarrass your species further. Perhaps if you return in a few hundred years, when you've developed proper energy weapons." "Is that a no to the demonstration?" Miller pressed, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the mockery. The High Counselor looked around at his fellow council members, many of whom were still chuckling. "Very well. If you insist on this demonstration, we will arrange it. Though I warn you, it will only serve to prove what we already know about the ineffectiveness of primitive weapons." As the human delegation was dismissed, Lieutenant Brown whispered to Miller, "They don't get it, do they?" Miller shook his head slightly. "They've relied on energy weapons for so long, they've forgotten the basic physics of kinetic impact. Their shields are designed to disperse energy, not stop mass." The human team walked out of the chamber, leaving behind the still amused council members. None of the aliens noticed the confident smiles on the humans' faces, nor did they understand that Earth's primitive weapons were about to teach them all a valuable lesson. As they boarded their transport back to the Earth ship, Miller thought about the upcoming demonstration. He knew that soon, very soon, the laughter would stop. Because while the Council saw primitive weapons, humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of throwing very fast, very deadly pieces of metal. And physics, as the Council was about to learn, didn't care how advanced your civilization was. The first contact with the Galactic Council hadn't gone as smoothly as hoped, but it wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. 3 months after Earth's humiliating presentation to the Galactic Council, Intelligence Officer Tom Reed sat at his desk aboard the Earth Observation Station, Watchtower, scanning through intercepted alien communications. His eyes widened as he noticed a pattern emerging from the seemingly random reports of attacks on outer colony worlds. The attacks had started small, isolated mining outposts and research stations going dark. But now entire colonies were being hit. The raiders, whoever they were, left no survivors and took no prisoners. They simply appeared, destroyed everything, and vanished. Reed's terminal beeped with another incoming report. A major council trading hub had gone silent. He quickly cross-referenced the attack pattern with previous incidents, and a clear picture emerged. "Captain Miller needs to see this," Reed muttered, gathering his data tablets. He hurried through the station's corridors, passing other Earth personnel who were still adjusting to their new role as observers of galactic politics. He found Miller in the station's observation deck, staring out at the distant stars. "Sir, we have a situation," Reed said, handing over the tablets. "The raiders aren't random pirates. They're following a strategic pattern." Miller studied the data, his expression growing more serious with each swipe. "They're testing defenses," he said finally, "probing for weaknesses in the Council's response times." "Yes, sir, but there's more." Reed pulled up another set of data. Every attacked location reported the same thing before going dark. Their energy weapons had no effect. "The raiders have some kind of advanced shielding technology." Miller's jaw tightened. "Just like we warned them about," he said quietly. "Have you mapped out their likely next target?" Reed nodded, bringing up a star chart. "Based on their pattern, I believe they'll strike here next, the Thompson Colony. It's a major agricultural world, supporting food production for dozens of council worlds." "How many civilians?" "Over 2 million, sir." Miller straightened up, his decision made. "Send a warning to the council. Mark it urgent." Hours later, the council's response arrived. Reed read it aloud in the emergency meeting room. "The Galactic Council appreciates Earth's concern, but reminds the human delegation that military matters are handled by species with appropriate technological advancement. Please refrain from further speculation about matters beyond your current capabilities." The room fell silent. Miller looked around at his team, seeing the same frustration on their faces that he felt. "They're still not taking us seriously," he said. "How long until the raiders reach Thompson Colony?" "At their current pace, less than 2 weeks," Reed replied. Miller paced the room, thinking. "We can't sit by and watch 2 million people die just because the council is too proud to listen." He turned to his communications officer. "Send another warning, but this time directly to Thompson Colony. Include all our data about the raiders' attack patterns." "Sir," Reed interrupted, "the Council has explicitly forbidden us from interfering in military matters. If we warn the colony, then we'll deal with the consequences," Miller finished. "I won't have those deaths on my conscience just because we followed protocol." The warning was sent, but the colony's response was similar to the Council's. Polite dismissal. They trusted their energy weapons and shield technology to protect them. A week later, Reed burst into Miller's quarters in the middle of the night cycle. "Sir, we're picking up distress calls from Thompson Colony. The raiders just dropped out of faster-than-light travel in their system." Miller was already pulling on his uniform. "Get me a direct line to their defense command." On the main screen, they watched in horror as the raiders' ships, sleek black vessels that seemed to absorb light, descended on the colony. The defenders fired their energy weapons, but just as in previous attacks, the beams splashed harmlessly off the raiders' shields. "Please," the colony's commander begged over the comm, "our weapons aren't working. We need help." Miller gripped the edge of his console, knuckles white. "We tried to warn you," he said softly. "We tried to tell you that relying solely on energy weapons was a mistake." The transmission cut off abruptly. Thompson Colony went dark, joining the growing list of worlds that had fallen to the raiders. In his quarters later that night, Miller drafted an emergency message to Earth Command. The galaxy was about to learn why humans hadn't abandoned their primitive weapons. He just hoped the lesson wouldn't come too late for everyone else. The Galactic Council's emergency session chamber was in chaos. Holographic displays showed the devastation at Thompson Colony: burning fields, destroyed cities, and over 2 million lives lost. The raiders had been thorough in their destruction. Admiral Mary Wilson stood before the council, her Earth Defense Force uniform a stark contrast to the flowing robes of the alien representatives. She had been summoned after the council finally acknowledged the severity of the crisis. 3 major colonies lost in the past month, High Counselor Blake said, his silvery skin now dull with stress. Our best weapons do nothing against their shields. Even our most advanced warships can't stop them. We tried to warn you, Wilson said, her voice firm but not accusatory. We attempted to show you the vulnerability in relying solely on energy weapons. Counselor Ross leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowed. And you believe your primitive projectile weapons would fare better. Before Wilson could respond, the chamber's alert system blared. A new hologram appeared, showing a massive fleet of raider ships approaching one of the council's core worlds. Impossible, Blake whispered. They've never struck this close to the core systems. Wilson studied the tactical display. How many civilians on that world? 15 million, Ross answered, his voice shaking. Our largest colony world. Wilson reached into her briefcase and pulled out a sealed document. I have authorization from Earth's government to offer immediate military assistance. We have a response fleet ready to deploy. The council members looked at each other, their earlier arrogance replaced by desperate fear. Blake spoke first. You actually believe your guns can stop them? Yes, Wilson said simply. But you need to make a decision now. That colony has less than 6 hours before the raiders arrive. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some members still couldn't accept help from a primitive species. Others were willing to try anything to stop the raiders. Enough. Blake's voice cut through the chaos. We have 15 million lives at stake. Pride has no place in this decision. He turned to Wilson. What do you need from us? Wilson activated her own tactical display. We need unrestricted access to your jump gates. Our ships are already loaded and ready, and we need your forces to follow our tactical commands during the battle. You expect us to take orders from, Ross began, but Blake cut him off. Granted, the High Counselor said. All of it. Save those people, Admiral. Wilson was already speaking into her comm unit. This is Admiral Wilson. Operation Steel Rain is go. I repeat, Operation Steel Rain is go. Within minutes, Earth's response fleet jumped into action. 20 warships, looking bulky and primitive compared to the sleek council vessels, moved through the jump gates. Each carried weapons that the council had laughed at just months ago. In her command ship, Wilson watched the tactical display as they approached the colony world. The raiders were already beginning their attack pattern. All ships, battle formations, she ordered. Remember your training. Their shields stop energy, not mass. Standard ammunition first, then switch to tungsten penetrators if needed. The raiders noticed the Earth fleet too late. Their first ships turned to face the new threat, obviously expecting the same ineffective energy weapons they'd brushed off before. All ships, weapons free, Wilson commanded. Show them why humanity never gave up on kinetic weapons. The space around the colony world lit up, not with energy beams, but with thousands of projectiles moving at incredible speeds. The raiders' shields, designed to disperse energy, did nothing against solid shells traveling at relativistic velocities. The first raider ship exploded as rounds tore through its hull. Then another fell, and another. The raiders attempted to return fire, but their energy weapons were met with old-fashioned armor plating, designed to absorb and dissipate their attacks. In the council chamber, The aliens watched in stunned silence as humanity's primitive weapons tore through the supposedly invincible raider fleet. Sometimes, Blake said quietly, the old ways are best. The battle was over in less than an hour. The colony was saved, and the raiders had learned a harsh lesson about underestimating primitive technology. As Wilson prepared her report for the council, she allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would be leading that change. The main war room of Earth's flagship Thunder buzzed with activity as Captain Miller studied the tactical displays. After their first successful defense of the Council colony, Earth's military had been given full authority to engage the raiders wherever they appeared. Status report. Miller called out to his tactical officer. 3 raider vessels detected near the mining outpost in Sector 7. Lieutenant Reed responded. They're following their usual attack pattern. Miller nodded grimly. They still haven't adapted to our weapons. Let's make this quick. He opened a channel to the rest of the Earth fleet. All ships, combat positions. Remember, no energy weapons, standard kinetic loadout only. The Earth ships moved into formation, their hulls bristling with railguns and missile pods. Unlike the sleek, almost artistic designs of Council vessels, Earth's ships were built for pure functionality. Blocks of armor and weapons wrapped around powerful engines. Raiders have spotted us, Reed announced. They're breaking off their attack run. Miller allowed himself a small smile. They're learning, but not fast enough. All ships, open fire. Protocol steel rain. The void of space lit up as thousands of tungsten rounds accelerated to near-relativistic speeds. The raiders attempted evasive maneuvers, but their ships were designed to deflect energy weapons, not dodge solid projectiles. The first raider vessel disappeared in a brilliant explosion as multiple rounds tore through its shield and hull. The second tried to return fire, its energy weapons splashing harmlessly against the Earth ship's ablative armor. Target their engines, Miller ordered. Let's take one intact this time. The Council scientists want to study their shield technology. The Earth gunners adjusted their aim with practiced precision. The second raider ship's engine section erupted in a cascade of secondary explosions, leaving it dead in space. The third raider vessel, seeing the fate of its companions, attempted to jump to faster-than-light speed. "Oh no, you don't," Miller muttered. "Lightning Squadron, you're up." From behind the main Earth fleet, 6 smaller ships burst forward. These were the new interceptors, designed specifically to prevent raider escapes. Each carried a single spinal-mounted mass driver, a massive railgun that ran the entire length of the ship. The interceptors fired in perfect sequence. 6 hypersonic projectiles crossed the void in milliseconds. The fleeing raider ship vanished in a spectacular explosion. "All targets neutralized," Reed reported. "Boarding teams are moving to secure the disabled vessel." Miller opened a channel to the nearby Council observation ship. "Area secured. You can begin civilian evacuation back to the mining outpost." The Council observer's voice was filled with barely contained awe. That battle lasted less than 5 minutes. Our fleets used to engage the raiders for hours, and we never managed to capture one of their ships. "Sometimes the simple solutions are the best ones," Miller replied. "We'll have engineering teams analyze their shield technology. Maybe we can find a way to adapt it to work against both energy and kinetic weapons." As the cleanup operation began, Miller received a priority message from Earth Command. More raider fleets had been detected in other sectors. The Council was requesting immediate assistance. "All ships, prepare for jump," Miller ordered. The raiders thought they could intimidate the galaxy with their advanced technology. Time to show them why humanity never stopped improving our primitive weapons. The Earth fleet aligned for their jump, leaving behind a field of debris that had once been supposedly invincible raider ships. In the Council observation vessel, the aliens watched with new respect. They had laughed at human weapons, calling them obsolete and primitive. Now those same weapons were saving Council worlds one by one. "Send word to Earth Command," Miller told his communications officer. "Tell them we need more ships out here." The raiders are about to learn that humanity doesn't just fight wars. We end them. The Earth fleet jumped away, leaving behind a clear message for any raiders who might come looking. The galaxy had new protectors, and their primitive weapons were more than up to the task. Again, Admiral Wilson commanded, watching as Council military trainees attempted to master the basics of ballistic weapon handling. Their training facility, established on a joint Earth Council space station, had been operating non-stop for the past month. Council Officer Dean, his blue scales shimmering under the training room lights, adjusted his grip on the rifle. "This feels primitive," he admitted, but without the contempt that such words once carried. "But I cannot argue with the results." Wilson walked over, correcting his stance slightly. "Remember, these weapons have recoil. Your energy weapons don't push back. These do. Lean into it." The training bay echoed with the sound of gunfire as the alien soldiers practiced. Each shot was a reminder of how quickly the galaxy had changed. After the successful defense of multiple colonies, the Council had finally admitted they needed to adapt. "Admiral," a voice called from the doorway. Lieutenant Reed entered, carrying a data tablet. "The analysis of the captured raider ship is complete. You'll want to see this." Wilson followed Reed to the technical lab, where Earth and Council scientists worked side by side. The captured raider vessel had been carefully disassembled, revealing the secrets of their supposedly impenetrable shields. "It's brilliant in its simplicity," the lead Council scientist, Dr. Grant, explained. "Their shields are perfectly tuned to disperse energy weapons. They created a defense so specialized that it became their greatest weakness." Wilson studied the technical readouts. "Can we adapt this technology?" "Better," Grant replied, his antenna twitching with excitement. "We're developing a hybrid system, combining their energy dispersion with traditional armor plating. It won't be perfect against either type of weapon, but it'll offer protection against both." "The raiders won't expect that," Wilson noted. "How soon can we begin production?" "The first prototypes are ready for testing. But there's more." Grant brought up another display. "We've also been studying your projectile weapons. With our advanced materials, we can make them even more effective." In the adjacent firing range, a demonstration was being prepared. A new rifle, sleek but still recognizably human in design, was mounted on a testing stand. The target was protected by a standard raider shield. "Watch this," Grant said proudly. He pressed a control, and the rifle fired. The round, made of a Council alloy, but following human ballistic principles, punched through the shield like it wasn't there. "Mass production begins next week," Grant announced. "Every Council world will be equipped with these hybrid weapons within 2 months." Wilson's communicator beeped. Another raider attack was in progress. But this time, something was different. The Council defense forces weren't waiting for Earth ships to arrive. On the tactical display, Wilson watched as Council ships, newly equipped with projectile weapons, engaged the raiders. The battle was short and decisive. For the first time, a raider attack had been repelled without Earth's direct intervention. "They learned quickly," Reed observed. "They had to," Wilson replied. "The raiders forced everyone to adapt, including themselves. Look at their tactics. They're becoming more cautious, using hit-and-run attacks instead of direct assaults." The statistics were clear. Raider attacks had decreased by 60% since Earth's weapons had been introduced to the wider galaxy. The remaining attacks were less effective, as more worlds adopted hybrid defense systems. In the training room, Council Officer Dean had finally mastered proper rifle handling. His shots hit the target consistently now, his movements showing the same precision he once applied to energy weapons. "Understanding breeds respect," he said as Wilson returned to observe. "We laughed at these weapons because we didn't understand them. Now we see their value." Wilson nodded. Every civilization develops along its own path. Sometimes the old ways persist because they work, not because of backwardness. The station's alert system activated. Another raider fleet had been detected, but this time There was no panic, no desperate calls for Earth's help. Council ships, armed with their new hybrid weapons, were already moving to intercept. The galaxy was changing. The raiders had intended to prove their superiority through advanced technology. Instead, they had forced the galaxy to remember that sometimes the simplest solutions were also the most effective. And somewhere out there, the raiders were learning that the weapons they had laughed at were the ones that had ended their reign of terror. Deep within the Council's premier research facility, Earth and Council engineers worked side by side on something unprecedented, a fusion of their different military technologies. Captain Miller watched as Dr. Grant demonstrated their latest creation. "We call it the hybrid assault system," Grant explained, gesturing to a weapon that looked both alien and familiar. "It combines your kinetic principles with our energy technology. Watch." The demonstration target was protected by the latest version of Raider shielding, captured from their most recent encounters. Grant activated the weapon, which hummed to life. When it fired, a superheated tungsten round encased in a plasma field streaked toward the target. The shield didn't just fail, it shattered. "The plasma field disrupts their shield matrix," Grant explained, "while the kinetic projectile delivers the killing blow. They can't defend against both at once." Miller nodded approvingly. "How soon until we can deploy these?" "Mass production begins tomorrow. But there's something else you need to see." They moved to the tactical center, where a large holographic display showed movement patterns of Raider forces. Lieutenant Reed was already there, studying the data with a grim expression. "They're gathering," Reed said without looking up. "The largest Raider fleet we've ever seen. And based on their trajectory." He paused, meeting Miller's eyes. "They're heading for Earth." Miller's jaw tightened. "They're desperate. We've pushed them back everywhere else. Now they want to strike at the source of their problems." "Sir," Reed continued, "there's more. Our long-range scans show they've modified their ships. They're carrying what appears to be primitive armor plating alongside their energy shields." "They're learning," Miller muttered, "just like we did." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Every available Earth and Council ship was mobilized. The combined fleet assembled in Earth's orbit, the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Wilson addressed the fleet from her flagship. "The Raiders think they can adapt to our tactics. They think adding some armor will save them. But they forgot something crucial. Humanity hasn't survived this long by standing still." The Raiders dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Their fleet was massive, thousands of ships strong. Their new designs showed both energy shields and physical armor, a clear attempt to counter Earth's weapons. "All ships, battle formations," Wilson commanded. "Deploy the new hybrid weapons. Show them what real evolution looks like." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The Raiders attacked with both energy weapons and their own version of kinetic projectiles, but they were facing an enemy that had already prepared for this. Earth ships launched their new hybrid rounds while Council vessels deployed experimental weapons that combined physical projectiles with energy fields. The Raiders' adapted defenses, designed to counter the old threats, proved inadequate against these new weapons. "They're breaking formation," Reed announced. "Their shields can't handle the hybrid attacks." Miller watched as the Raiders' carefully planned assault fell apart. Their ships, caught between two types of weapons they couldn't fully defend against, began to fall one by one. "All ships, push forward," Wilson ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The combined Earth Council fleet advanced relentlessly. Ships armed with both ancient and ultra-modern weapons tore through the Raider fleet. The message was clear. The galaxy had evolved beyond their ability to threaten it. Hours later, as the last Raider ships fled or surrendered, Miller stood in the observation deck of his ship, looking down at Earth. The planet was safe, protected by a fleet that represented the best of both human determination and Council technology. "To think," Dr. Grant said, joining him at the window, "all this started because they laughed at your weapons." Miller smiled slightly. Sometimes the best way to advance isn't to abandon the old ways, but to combine them with the new. The hybrid weapons had done more than win a battle. They had shown the galaxy a new path forward, one where ancient wisdom and modern innovation worked together, creating something greater than either could achieve alone. And somewhere out there, the remaining raiders were learning a harsh lesson about the danger of underestimating primitive weapons, especially when those weapons never stopped evolving. The Galactic Council chamber looked very different from the day humans first presented their primitive weapons. Gone were the mocking smiles and dismissive glances. In their place was respect, earned through blood and victory. Admiral Wilson stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by both Earth and Council military leaders. Before them knelt the Raider commander, finally captured after their devastating defeat at Earth. "You have proven stronger than we anticipated," the Raider commander admitted, his dark armor scratched and dented. "We believe advanced technology made us invincible. We were wrong." High Counselor Blake stepped forward, his silvery skin gleaming. "The Raiders' surrender is complete and unconditional. Their remaining forces have stood down across all sectors." Wilson nodded, remembering the long path that had led to this moment. "And their technology?" "Being freely shared," Blake replied. "As Earth shared its weapons knowledge with us, the Raiders will share their shield technology. No more secrets, no more technological superiority. We all advance together." The chamber's main display activated, showing shipyards across the galaxy. New vessels were under construction, their designs a perfect blend of Earth's practical military philosophy and the Council's advanced technology. "The first joint-designed warships will launch next month," Captain Miller reported. "Hybrid weapons as standard armament, combined shield and armor systems, and crews from both Earth and Council worlds." "And what of the Raiders?" asked Counselor Ross, his 4 eyes fixed on their former enemy. The Raider commander looked up. "My people will adapt. We thought ourselves superior because of our technology. You taught us that true strength comes from learning from others, not dismissing them." Wilson turned to address the full council. "The galaxy is entering a new age, one where we don't laugh at different approaches, but learn from them. The Raiders taught us that no single path to advancement is the right one." In the shipyards orbiting Earth, the first of the new joint-design vessels prepared for its maiden voyage. Its hull bore markings in both Earth and Council scripts, its weapon systems a perfect fusion of old and new. "The Raiders won't be the last threat we face," Miller said, watching the ship's final preparations. "But next time, we'll face it together." Dr. Grant joined them, carrying the latest designs for the next generation of hybrid weapons. Some of the Council worlds are already experimenting with combining ancient projectile designs with quantum field technology. The possibilities are endless. The Council chamber erupted in applause as the first Joint Earth Council Military Academy was officially opened. Young officers from hundreds of worlds would train together, learning both primitive and advanced combat techniques. "To think," Blake mused, "just a year ago we laughed at human weapons. Now our own cadets are learning to use them alongside energy weapons." Wilson smiled. "Sometimes the best solution is not the most advanced one. And sometimes it's combining the old with the new." The Raider commander was led away to begin helping integrate his people's technology into the new combined fleet. Their empire had fallen, but their knowledge would help build something greater. "What happens now?" Ross asked. "We keep evolving," Wilson replied. "Not just our technology, but our understanding. Earth learned from the Council's advanced science. The Council learned from Earth's practical military experience. Even the Raiders taught us something about adaptive shield technology." The chamber's displays showed scenes from across the galaxy. Council worlds adopting hybrid defense systems, Earth ships upgraded with advanced technology, and former Raider worlds joining the new unified defense force. "The galaxy laughed at human guns," Miller said quietly, "until they fired. But the real victory wasn't proving our weapons worked. It was showing that combining different approaches makes us all stronger." As the ceremony concluded, Wilson looked out at the assembled representatives of countless worlds. The galaxy had changed. Old prejudices about primitive technology had been replaced by a new appreciation for different paths of development. The age of technological arrogance was over. A new era had begun, one where ancient wisdom and advanced science worked together, where no approach was dismissed without understanding, and where the galaxy's strength came from its diversity, not its uniformity. And somewhere in the vast chamber, the sound of laughter could be heard again, not mocking this time, but celebrating how far they had all come together.